Okay, so you join me for the 4th of 4, or 4th of 5, I'm not sure yet, tutorial in matte painting. So this is what we're trying to achieve. Now, if you look on this side here, there's loads of layers, and this is what we're going to end up with, okay? So you've got to try and keep up with this one. Now, basically, I want to put, before I start, I want to sort everything out in folders, okay? This is really important. So I've got, at the top I've got grass and grass cleanup. I'm going to select them both with shift, hit a folder, double name it, grass, okay? Now it's important that you do this because otherwise you'll get lost in no time at all. So make sure the layers are named and shift click and put them in folders. Hedge cleanup and hedge. I'm going to put into a folder called hedge. Rock one, even though it's just one layer, I like to keep them as they are. It's just for the sake of purpose. Call that, double name that. Okay. So do the same. Do. Then mountains left and mountains right. I want to put them into mountains. Then I'll just rename this to sky. Background. I don't normally put the sky in a folder, but I will for the sake. And sky. There we go. Right. So the folders, apart from this background pink thing, which is just a checker we were using earlier. What's always nice to do is turn it on and off when it's below everything. And if you see any pink showing through anywhere, which I don't, that means that you've got, you know, a hole there. So there's, you know, like maybe there's a bit of grass missing by here and you can see through it. But I'm going to get rid of that because we don't need that anymore. And I'll just keep my background layer in there. So, first of all, we're going to start colour correcting this hedge by here because this blue is really starting to irk me. So, basically, there are two, whatchamacallit, I'm just going to put it at the top. There are two adjustment layers that you're going to want to use. Now, in order to make adjustments to images, what people normally do is go to image, adjustments, let's just select. This is why we can't do it in folders. You wouldn't do it anyway. What people normally do is select a layer and go image, adjustments. Not the way you do it. You can't physically do. Next, this icon. If you click that, it gives you a list of all the adjustments. Just doing it to an image, it does on and off and connect to certain things. Okay. Now the two will be used, Hue and Saturation. Okay, these are your best friends. So first, in order to, you know, target this blue curves in After Effects before, so created a curves adjustment layer. Doing it the other way does that, and that's why it's important. Made a curves adjustment layer, and if I start, you know, altering, it's doing it to everything apart from if I turn on the branches. It's not doing it to the branches, but that's not illustrated. Yeah, so if I make it completely dark, it does it to everything but the branches. You know, if I make it completely bright, it does it to everything but the branches. So that's because it currently does it to everything that's below it. Okay, branches aren't. I'm going to turn them off because they're distracting. Now, I only wanted to apply this to the hedge, so I'm going to drag this curves to so it's just above the hedge. Now you can see when I'm dragging it, sometimes I'm on top of temple at the moment and it selects a box around it, but if I pull it just below, it's just got one line. So if I were to drop it when it's on top of temple, it'll go inside the temple layer, and that's not what you want. Okay, so you want to drag it so it's just that single line in between temple and hedge, and it'll be above hedge. Okay, so now what happens? Oh, it's doing everything apart from temple, grass and branches. Soon hedge, rock 1, rock 2, mountains and sky. Again, that's not what we want to do. So in order to connect it so it only targets the hedge, if you put your mouse in between curves 1 and hedge folder, hold Alt, you can see your cursor changes to a little connector, okay? Click, and now all of a sudden you've got this arrow. So this curves is only going to alter this folder, whatever's in this folder, which is hedge cleanup and hedge. Okay, so if you click off it, you don't see the properties anymore. In order to see the properties, you may think, you know, sometimes clicking this one doesn't quite work because you may click the layer mask and you're like, oh, what's going on? Just click this little icon, this adjustment layer icon, and we're back in, okay? Now, we want to take out the blue. Okay, so you can see now when I start adjusting, it's just this hedge, which is good. I want to take out this blue. I don't like it, so I'm going to go into the blue channel, and I know it's mid-tones, so I'm going to bring down the highlights, and also bring down the mid-tones just a touch. Now it's currently doing it to, as we said, the whole of the hedge layer, but I want to single it out even further. Okay. Now what you'll notice is it's already, when you make any adjustment layer, it's layer mask. Okay. So if I click over to this layer mask, I can get my brush and I can start painting. First of all, I'm going to invert it so it doesn't affect anywhere. So Control I, when you've selected this layer mask, turns it black, so it isn't affecting anything whatsoever. It's only ever able to affect the hedge because we're connecting it to the hedge, but I want to paint in basically on the edge where it's blue. So I'm going to paint in with white on this layer mask, on the edges of these blue sections by here, and the curves is only to affect these areas that I'm painting. If I'm painting up here, it's not going to do anything because it's just connected to the hedge, and we're just singling out which bits of the hedge we're going to apply it to. And you can use the opacity if you want. I'm basically just going to be clicking through, looking for all these tinted blue bits, okay, and just making sure that it only attacks these bits. So start painting through, and it doesn't do an amazing job at the moment, but once we've got this layer mask selected, we can go back into the adjustments and further, you know, further play around with it. There's also something else I'm going to show you as well after this, but this is how you would correct it through color correction. But let me just draw around all of it first so we just get all of it. Just click in and paint in. You can see where my thumbnail of the layer mask is updating up here. I'm just going to click in, make sure we're painting all of it. Okay, so turning it, let's scroll out a sec, and turning it on and off, you can see it's making a little touch of a difference. Now, in order to get back, because I'm covering my properties, shows just the layer mask properties. In order to get back, just click this little half circle, and we're back in here. So we can, you know, let's pump a little bit more green into there. It goes too bright, so let's just do it a smidgen. See, you know, just give it a little touch of green. Red won't really do anything. We could give it a little touch of red, actually. Let's see. And let's go back into the blues and suck them out a little touch more. And you can see, turning it on and off, that is now a big difference. And you know, if you're viewing this as a whole, actually, see how much difference that makes? That's really good. So you can see there is still a bit of turquoise in there, but as a whole, when you zoom out, it's actually a massive impact. So the other way we can you know, target this, if we don't want to use the color correction way, is to go into the hedge. Okay, you've got your hedge here, turn it on and off, and let's zoom in, and let's turn off this color correction as well so we can see the damage. Let's right click, not the layer mask, let's right click this image here, which is the hedge. So right click and click select pixels, and this basically loads your mask up. Okay, so what you can do is you can go to select, modify, and contract by 1 pixel, and have a look, see if you can see what happens. Can I zoom in anymore? No. It basically, it pushes it in very slightly, so some of the blue disappears. Okay, well, not yet obviously. You've got that mask, and now you can go to your layer mask to the right and just start painting white in, like so. I need to turn my opacity up first and make sure you're on the layer mask. Right, okay. The reason it's not working is, first of all, let's undo that. We need to invert the mask, so it's only letting us do the inside at the moment. Okay, so all you need to do is, when you're in this view, just go Control Shift I, and it inverts that mask. It doesn't look like a lot's changed, but now I can just paint out on the layer mask, okay, and just paint out some of these extra blue pixels that are causing us an issue, like so. And there's still some left, of course there is, but you know, that can be targeted with the color correction. You can sometimes use both of these. If you want to deselect, get rid of those marching ants, Control D, and there you go. And now this hedge cleanup, no, sorry, this color correction, when you apply it, they both work well together. So that's kind of how we're targeting that, alright? Now, what we want to do next is this rock by here needs to look a little bit more sort of reddish brown, like this one in the foreground. Okay, so we're going to use curves to do that as well, and maybe have a look at hue and saturation. So rock 2, this is the rock in question. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's go create curves, make sure it's above rock 2, hold Alt, and connect it up. Now it's looking a bit sort of hazy blue at the moment, so I would start by looking at getting some of these blues out, making it a bit warmer. And let's have a look, maybe something like this. Now I want to push some of these reds, so that's too much. Basically you just got to look at each colour, think, right, what is it lacking in order to look like, you know, this kind of colour. So I'm going to go into the greens. I think the greens are alright. And basically I just keep on coming into each, and let's go into the RGB, which is the overall. Maybe make it give it a touch of mid-tones, darker. Feels a bit too red at the moment in the highlights, so I'm going to decrease that and just start playing around, kind of getting somewhere. There's a bit too much green now. Basically each time you modify one, they kind of, you know, you think, oh, I need to modify another one now. So that's all natural. Now if we take a look, you see right away we're taking out a lot of that bluey haze, and we're kind of getting it quite similar. So what we can do is make another curves, and again make sure Alt and click to connect these up, make sure they're connected. Okay, so you can have essentially as many as you want, as many different I'm just creating loads of different, you know, adjustment layers, and if they're all linked, you can link as many as you want, and that gives a bit of a weird effect. Actually, I quite like that. But yeah, I'm going to delete posterize and invert, but you can link as many as you want. Okay, now I'm just going to target these oranges in here. So first of all, I've got this connected to rock 2. I'm going to make it quite dark or bright. I just want to invert this layer mask, so Control I, so it's completely black, and I just want to paint in with my white on the layer mask just this area, because it's just this area I want to target, really. Just this orangey area. It's a little bit too orange for me. And I'll get a soft brush, so there's, you know, a sort of nice little fall off. Make it a little bit like that. It's just this area I want to target. Okay, just in there. So now if we click back on this half circle and we modify, we're just modifying that area, okay? So let's, basically I want to take out some of the reds in there, some of the red highlights. And let's take out, let's give it a little touch of blue to take out the yellows, perhaps. And what about greens? How's that working? Yeah, give it a touch. And again, let's go down the reds. Let's go into the RGB. Make it a bit darker in there. Okay, now we turn this one on and off, and you can see where we're kind of, you know, just targeting that area, right? So I think personally that it's getting there. I think these greens actually, they're quite reddy green, and these are very luscious green. So that's another thing I'm going to do, okay? So another curves layer, Alt, click in the middle to make them linked. Okay, so I'm going to make them, you know, just quite dark so I can see. And then I'm going to invert again, Control I, invert that layer mask, and just paint in some soft whites so I know it's just this area that I'm targeting. These need to be, you know, luscious green like these ones, because if they're in the same environment, that's, unless they're a different kind of tree, but you know, that's just what we want to do. So let's come back, and you can see it's just this area we're modifying. So let's take out some of the reds. We're already getting there, see. Let's go to the greens and just see. It's a bit too luscious. You can just see the very, very, very fine modifications. You can kind of just start getting there. So then, I think there's a little bit too much blue now in these greens, so just decrease. And I think it's a bit too luscious all of a sudden. So you can see how any modification we make, we can single it out to a certain area. So turning this on and off, you can see how these greens are a bit more similar. They're a bit too bright at the moment, so let's bring it down a smidgen. And you can see, you know, it's working very well for us. So turning all these off, that's what we started with. And so yeah, that's what we started with. That was an overall correction. We corrected then some of the orangey bits, and then we looked at the greens, matching the greens. Okay. Now obviously this is very grey, and this is quite quite colourful. So another thing we're going to do, I'm going to try not to stay too long on this one, is Hue and Saturation. Okay. Again, Alt and link it. Now I can pull down the saturation or up it, but I'm going to pull it down slightly, and we're starting to look quite a bit closer actually. And I can do the lightness if I want to, something like that. Yeah, and that's what I'm going to do. However, I don't want it to affect these greens. So again, with my layer mask, I'm going to invert it and just paint it where I want it, and I want it on these rocks. Okay, so start painting it in here, so it's only desaturated in the areas where you want it to. We don't want it to be on these bits of grass, because it starts looking a bit naff then. And you can see with just these, you know, we've only looked at 2 adjustment layers so far, but 2 types, but we've created many of them. So turning this saturation on and off, you can see it's just attacking that bit. So I'm going to desaturate it, or saturate it low, so you can see where it's targeting, and I want to make sure, come back to the layer mask, that I'm painting it in everywhere. So sometimes I push it to the extremity, just so I can see where exactly I'm targeting, and then let's desaturate this. And you can see now, this has made a big impact, how we're getting something very close to this. That's quite nice. Again, those greens are a bit too luscious, so if you can't get anywhere, if you've pushed it too far and you're struggling to get somewhere, which is the greens, we should be naming these, so this is the greens. What you can also do is select the layer and bring down the opacity, and just a touch like that. And you know, if you can't get there with the other things, that helps a lot. So the other issue now is the greens in the trees by here are more saturated than the grass and the bushes, but we'll tackle that later. I want to move on to basically what I'm going to do with the background. Before I do that, is I'm going to make these mountains very no, sorry, not very, just a touch more desaturated. So I've got them, I haven't really done it that much there, but I'm just going to suck a little bit of colour out of them and make them just a touch more blue, because they're off into the horizon. And you can see as I'm modifying it, it's doing it to the sky as well, and that is because I have not linked them. So just link them, and as you watch this hue, you can't see much of a change, but you know, let's keep that at 0 and just desaturate a touch. And I'm going to target the colour with the curves. If I've got a saturation issue, then I do use hue and saturation. You can do colour inside there, but I prefer doing colour inside curves. And I'm just going to push these blues a smidgen, even that's too much, so push it ever so slightly, like so. That's too much even. So what I could do is bring the reds down a touch. Okay, something like that. So we're going from this to this. Okay, right, now final part is we've got, you know, this is the base green that we're sticking with, and you can see this should be the most saturated. So I'm going to saturate up the saturation of the temple and grass a little bit. So new saturation layer, saturate it a bit, so you can see it's doing the whole thing at the moment. Just link it to the temple, and I'm just going to push it up by, I don't know, plus 12. I'm going to apply the same saturation adjustment layer to the grass as well. So I'm going to drag down to new, and you can see it automatically links in on top of the temple. We don't want to do that. We want to push this above the grass and have it do the same to the grass and link it in. So you can see it's not much of a difference, but we want what's closest to the camera to be more saturated. And then I think this hedge, it's already got curves on there, but needs to be a touch more saturated as well. So link that in, alt click, and just bring up saturation a touch. Okay, now this rock, rock 1, which is this one, hasn't got anything yet. This needs to start, as it's getting further away, getting a touch more desaturated, okay? So I'm going to link that, come in, and just bring this down. What's -6 looking like? Not a lot. I'm going to bring it down so it's a little bit. Colour sucked out a little touch. Okay, now rock 2, I'm going to give it yet another hue saturation. So all that's made it at the bottom for some reason. That's fine. So I'm going to just suck out some of the colour now. So far we've been kind of matching this rock to this rock, which is good. But now we need to, as it gets further away, just suck some of the colour out and make it a little bit lighter, like so. And I'll go back into the rock 1 actually and give that a little bit of lightness. So you can see it's kind of losing some of that colour as it gets further away. Not too much there. And then I'll also come into the mountains and give that a little bit of lightness as well. Okay. Now, the last thing, I know I'm going on a bit, the last thing I want to do is look at the sky. The sky is too saturated for me at the moment. Actually, there's another thing I'm going to do after this, but yes, the sky. I'm going to just go in, hue saturation, link it to the sky, and take some of the colour out. You don't want a grey sky, but I'm going to lighten it a bit as well. That's too much, so let's split the difference, go +5, and maybe a little bit more colour. Something like that, right. Okay, and the final thing I'm going to do is turn on these branches. Now, if you look sort of just by, this area, they're far too blue at the moment. That looks disgusting. We're going to, again, create a curves, put it above, link it in, and go to blues, and it's in the highlights. I'm just going to bring them down. Don't like that. And so now if we come back over here, click it on and off, you can see it's a massive difference. They're sort of greeny brown, which is what they should be. Okay, now I'm going to wrap this one up here. There's going to be another one which just does very, very final touches. It's probably going to be about 2 or 3 minutes long. But that is basic colour correction. Now what I would advise is naming, like, you know, when you've got specific ones. So let's turn the branches off. When you've got specific ones which are, you know, let's have a look at the hedge. So this is just targeting those blues. Now it's best to rename this curves dash blue tops, just so you know exactly what it's doing. Hue and saturation, that's an overall one, so I'll probably just, you know, you could name it to more saturation or something, but ones which are doing specific jobs, like, let's have a look at this rock one. It's making the greens on rock 2 look more luscious, so let's rename this curves to lush greens. And then there was this one, wasn't there, which was targeting the sort of orangey bit. Actually, looking at it now, I want to get rid of that. That's fine. I spend hours on these. Then there was the lush greens. What was that? That was desaturating the rock. But yeah, basically, let's turn all that back on. That's your matte painting, and I'm going to come back with a little final touches one. So cheers for tuning in, and I shall catch you soon.